Penn State still can't win the big game. Ohio State dominates out on the road in Washington. Indiana survives a scare in Iowa, and Illinois gets the bounce back it needed as we look across the Big Ten Conference.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, it is a crossover episode to look across the Big Ten. My name is Seyko, and I'm the host of Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily source for all things Penn State sports. He is Jacob Goins, host of Locked On Hoosiers, your daily source for all things Indiana, as we team up weekly here to look back across what the Big Ten gave us in the previous week and preview what's to come in the upcoming week here. Plus, of course, focus on our specific outlets with Penn State and Indiana. Today's show is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward, Mazda Move and Be Moved. Friendly reminder to let us know your thoughts down in the comments section as we begin with takeaways from Big Ten Week 5. I think it's fair. I mean, I know that I cover Penn State, so this is kind of it's easy but difficult, right? Because I've talked about it ad nauseum here, but Indiana gets away with a scare in Iowa, which is kind of shocking after you win 63-10 over a formerly ranked top 10 team. But starting with what did honestly turn into at least potentially a game of the season, regular season anyway. I think that can be a top 3 game when all's said and done across the entire sport for the entire regular season here. As that went to double overtime, Penn State mounted a 2-touchdown comeback to tie the game and send it to overtime. The whiteout never disappoints, win or loss. But here we go again, Jacob. Deja vu over here. From the outside looking in, from the 1,000-foot view perspective, how do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the boat with a lot of people, man. Unfortunately, James Franklin in big games strikes again. And look, I know the Penn State fans are tired of hearing about it. I know you're tired of talking about it. But at what point do the numbers start to be fully accurate, right? I mean, 1-18 against top 10 opponents in the Big Ten at his time.
Top 5, 4-21 against top 10.
I thought that was top 10 in the Big Ten.
Get it square. Okay.
I think it's 1-18. I think it's 1-18 against top 10 opponents in the Big Ten, which is crazy to think he's played that many games against top 10 opponents in the Big Ten. Regardless.
Well, 12 years will do that, right?
Yeah, especially in this conference with the teams at the top. But at what point do you have to start buying into those and saying, man, maybe this can't be fixed, right? And the thing that stood out to me, Seyko, and I know you've talked about it, is the idea that Penn State couldn't do anything offensively, and not that Oregon was doing anything crazy either, but Penn State waited until they were down 14 points, and they were like, oh, all right, gotta go, gotta pick it up, gotta do something different, and then it worked, and they ended up going to double overtime and had every chance to win that football game. And it's easy to jump on James Franklin. It's easy to dog on Penn State. It's easy to poke fun and say, ha, 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 you can't do it, another big game. But, man, you got to look at yourself internally if you're Penn State and start to have those conversations if it doesn't happen this year for Franklin and the Nittany Lions, which I know was your message coming into this year.
They've had the most leverage, I would say. You know, it's kind of that talk of if not now, then when kind of thing, because how much closer can you be or how much leverage can you have? Yeah. And I mean, truly, you can always better your best. You know, could James Franklin have more NIL money to go get recruits and things like that? There are still some things that Penn State isn't perfect at, but when you did go all in, you get the defensive coordinator, you have your best coordinator duo that you ever had under James Franklin. You retain a bulk of the roster. It's all the same stuff I said in the offseason. It's not completely over. Now, I'm not going to go here and say that, hey, they are Ohio State 2.0 from last season. This is a team that if they go 10-2, they'll just run the table in the playoff. They just lost a key player in Tony Rojas for the entire season. What it seems like here, it's a long-term injury, but it's most likely a season-ending injury here.
Yeah,
it's not looking good for Penn State. But in theory, again, Indiana, you know, we'll talk about this, of course, as it gets closer. Could be the deciding game for Penn State if they actually get into the playoff or not, because if they lose to both Ohio State and Indiana, they are not getting in. Let's talk about the Hoosiers now.
Sure.
As 20-15 against Iowa, hey, spooky things happen in Kinnick Stadium.
Yeah.
I will never look past an Iowa team that is playing at home, regardless if they are, hey, they could be a 10-2 team, or maybe this is a 6-6 season. They are still always formidable at home. What do you look at and say, are you concerned about the Hoosiers, or is that just a game where, they made some mistakes, but Iowa just plays everybody tough when they're at home like that?
Well, there's several things that we've been digesting on Locked On Hoosiers, and as the Indiana fan base has over the past nearly week now, is that is a tough place to play. Indiana has not won in Iowa in Kinnick Stadium in 18 years. Now, they have not played there consistently over those years, but it has been 18 years since the Hoosiers went into Iowa and came out with a win. And I've had to admit it all week long, and I'm proud to do so. I was wrong about Iowa and how talented and good they are in terms of their guys up front, because their defensive line bullied Indiana's offensive line, which is not a good sign. And
is that a major concern going forward?
It has to be, right? Going into Oregon, plus Penn State's on that schedule too, of course. And there are some sleeper teams on there as well. I mean, there's some good teams that Indiana still has to play. And if you get bullied up front, like you did last year, right, against Ohio State and Notre Dame, your two biggest games of the year that Indiana lost both of, it was because you couldn't keep up front. And that's what the Hoosiers tried to address in the transfer portal this offseason. I think you can get it fixed. I think you can figure it out and try to formulate your offense around that if it's not going to be the strength that you thought it was. But what stands out to me is in a close game on the road where you play terrible for the first 3.5 quarters, Indiana found a way to get it done. Fernando Mendoza found a way to get it done, taking hit after hit after hit. The biggest one of the day was on the touchdown pass that he threw to Elijah Surratt, who then runs it in for the go-ahead touchdown. Defense continues to play lights out. It was really 20-13. The safety at the end was kind of weird, but I'm still okay on Indiana. But this game coming up against Oregon next week, which we're going to talk about here momentarily, that's the litmus test, right? That's the one that really tells us where this Indiana team is after beating Illinois and beating Iowa. Now you take a step up in competition, as you well know, and you go take on what is possibly the best team in the country, the Oregon Ducks.
Oh, you will get a reality check facing the Oregon Ducks. I can personally attest to that there.
Yep.
So all four teams, I think we got some clarity on here. I know we got some clarity. Ohio State defeating Washington.
Looks
Illinois,
really
Illinois defeating USC as well. It's particularly for Washington, USC, and Illinois because all three of those teams are really the ones that are vying for that fourth or maybe fifth Big Ten spot in a hypothetical college football playoff bracket. And it's kind of like a last man standing situation. Ohio State and Oregon, I think it's a 1A, 1B situation as far as who's at the top of the Big Ten, but also who's at the top of the country right now. You can make the argument for Ohio State. I honestly think Oregon is that 1A team at this point in time because I still have some questions about Ohio State's offense. I think Oregon across the board feels like the more complete team. But I'm not sure what to make of. Is Illinois in a better situation? I'm not going to discount USC because they played a 9 a.m. Pacific time game against a tough team, right? That the deck stacked against them. And then Washington, look, that's a national title contending team. I feel like Washington's only going to get better. So
don't forget about Michigan too. Michigan's right in that conversation also, who was on a bye last week and a sneaky game this week.
That's what I mean. So of the bunch, I don't have any clarity as far as who's still in the best situation because I feel like if you put USC and Illinois on a neutral site at a normal kickoff time for both teams, USC is probably winning that game. Sure. So who out of those four, who would you say you're the most confident in? I got to go with Michigan with USC behind them. I think they just got a bad draw against Illinois.
Weirdly enough, I think I'm sticking with Washington. Is that crazy to say that I think Washington still has three of the best offensive players in the country? They just went up against probably the best defensive unit in the country in Ohio State. And Washington's only going to get better. You said it. And their schedule lightens up as they go. It's not as difficult moving forward. I think Washington could absolutely get hot and make a run as the fourth team in the college football playoff. They play Maryland, Rutgers, Michigan, Illinois, and then Wisconsin, Purdue, UCLA before they play Oregon. Washington's got winnable games on that schedule and other opportunities to make up for what they couldn't do against Ohio State. Washington's the team I'm sticking with. If they figure it out offensively, watch out for the Huskies.
All right, we're going to get back to Penn State and Indiana, go a little more in depth here because Penn State could very well miss the college football playoff. Indiana's looking to take that step forward and not just be, hey, somebody that sneaks into the playoff, somebody that can contend for a Big Ten title and cement itself in that conversation with Ohio State and Oregon. That is coming up next here on this Locked On Crossover. And this episode is brought to you by Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture. Keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward is Devontae Russ's 2-touchdown performance. Now, I know Penn State is coming off of a loss against that Oregon team, but in order to get it to double overtime the way they did, Devontae Russ, transfer wide receiver, stepped up in that moment, had 2 touchdowns to help Penn State tie the game, send it to overtime. They didn't overcome the Oregon Ducks, but Devontae Russ and Penn State certainly kept the game moving forward with those kinds of clutch plays. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved.
This Locked On Crossover is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time that you order, these players delivered when it mattered the most. Let's break it down. And it's got to be Indiana's wide receiver, Elijah Surratt. Coming into the season, we knew he was one of the best in the Big Ten. I said he was one of the best in college football. And when the Hoosiers needed him most, he stepped up against the Iowa Hawkeyes. How about 6 catches, 132 yards, and the go-ahead touchdown for the Hoosiers to escape Iowa and get a win 20-15. Just like Elijah Surratt delivered for Indiana, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday that you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday, keep the streak alive, fuel your game day, only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period runs through November 18th. Welcome back into this Locked On Crossover of Hoosiers and Nittany Lions. I'm Jacob Goins of Locked On Hoosiers. He is Zach Seyko of Locked On Nittany Lions. And as we transition from last week into this week's Seyko, we got to start with, where does Penn State go from here? Rather than everybody saying, Penn State can't win, what are they saying in Happy Valley? What are those conversations? You mentioned the Indiana game. Yeah,
same thing.
They're just the same thing as always. You mentioned the Indiana game could be that moment where Penn State finally calls it on James Franklin. As the Indiana guy, I'm flattered that Indiana's the game that everybody now circles for Penn State. But is that really where we are in Happy Valley? Is, man, if you can't beat Indiana, that's the game that they decide to make the call?
Well, I don't know that it's going to come down to it. That's make or break for this season. I don't know if that's make or break for James Franklin. Okay. Spencer McLaughlin, our Oregon, just generally college football counterpart, has gone on the record to say that is a fireable offense if Penn State goes 9-3 and ends up missing the playoff, or just and who knows, maybe 9-3 seems like a logical outcome if they don't beat any of the top teams. But if you do lose the team, say that spirals continuously. If you finish 8-4, if you finish 7-5, then the conversation gets a lot more difficult, and James Franklin's seat gets a little warmer. It's just not as easy to say, all right, that's it, let's pull the plug on this. He's got almost a $50 million buyout. The 2027 class, and I know that's not what people want to hear, but James Franklin still has these elite recruiting classes coming up.
Right.
2026 is solid. It's a solid group. 2027, that could be, I mean, Brian Smith, our recruiting expert here on the Locked On Podcast Network, says the way it's shaping up, at least it's still very early, but when you have a top 10 player in the nation, potentially 2 more top 50 players in the nation already in the fold, I mean, we're talking about a top 3 class, best case scenario. So Penn State is doing the right things financially. NIL is better. They're just getting more money poured into the athletic program, which is going to go to football. So if you give James Franklin more competitive resources, they're still behind Ohio State. They're still behind Michigan. They're still behind Notre Dame in that category. But what if you start to level the playing field even more? And I know is it a fool's gold situation potentially, but it's not just easy. Hey, let's do it. Let's pull the plug. It's just not that simple, because it actually might cost Penn State more than people realize, and not just in terms of dollars. The complicated thing that I pointed out on our squad show is that Franklin just has the support of everybody that has walked through the hallways of Penn State football buildings for the past decade plus. Okay. 99% of former players, and I guess I won't say coaches, right? Mike Yursich probably doesn't speak too highly about him, but the people that have worked with him for the most part say, hey, James Franklin's a good guy, I'll go to bat for him. 99% of players will do that. They continuously say James Franklin is the best coach that I could have ever played for. Why would you destroy that? Why would you destroy that, especially when you're still getting double-digit win seasons? You're going 10-2. You're going 11-1. Is it really that bad? Are we really that miserable over here? It's not national titles, but dang, it's not like it's 6-6.
Right. And I've compared it to this before. I don't know if I've done it here on the Locked On Network or if this was on my radio show, but it seems like it's the Mark Richt effect at Georgia in the 2000s and in the early teens, right? If fans are familiar with Mark Richt during his time in Athens, that's a guy that was winning 9 or 10 games a year back in, again, the 2000s and the early 2000 teens, where Georgia, again, before Kirby Smart, Georgia hadn't won a national title since like the 40s or the 60s or something. Like, it had been a long time, okay? Or maybe the 80s, whatever. It had been a long time since Georgia had won a national title. And Mark Richt, again, 9, 10 games, almost consistently every year at Georgia. And they finally said, hey, man, we appreciate what you've been doing. We're going to go a different direction. We feel we could take that next step. They find Kirby Smart. And, of course, they've done that. Is it possible Penn State could get to that moment where, look, recruiting classes are great. Fan support is, for the most part, great. Player support is great, too. But at the end of the day, Seyko, you got to win games.
I would say that James Franklin's tenure compared to Mark Richt's is better. I mean,
I agree. Richt, yeah, absolutely.
Because Mark Richt, and now he has a larger sample size. Like, I'm looking here and I'm just seeing multiple seasons where they're unranked. James Franklin, okay, they finished unranked in the COVID season, and then in 2021, which also had to do with the impact of recruiting that the COVID restrictions had. But then in 2022, double-digit win season again. You lose to Ohio State and Michigan, which were playoff caliber teams. 2023, you lose to Ohio State and Michigan, which were playoff caliber teams. 2024, you lose to all the teams that were just slightly better than you. Okay, those Mark Richt teams were losing games that they necessarily shouldn't have, and definitely were underwhelming expectations. Penn State's in the top 10 pretty consistently over the entire tenure of James Franklin. So Penn State still at least has a better setup than that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think it's in that same conversation, but Franklin definitely
similar.
At the upper level.
Similar.
Yeah, it's a similar conversation for sure. Again, with Indiana still being on that schedule, right? Of course, Ohio State on that schedule, but you guys have chances. Penn State has chances to get right, figure things out, starting with this weekend with UCLA. I mean, win some games, build some confidence, but Ohio State, Indiana back-to-back, it's fascinating to me because for the Hoosiers, we go on the road to Oregon next week, rather, and then we have a couple of games in between the Oregon game and the Penn State game. So if Eugene doesn't go the way we want it to, we have an opportunity to kind of figure it out, kind of get it back right. And if Penn State slips the week before, you never know what could happen when the Hoosiers come to Happy Valley.
Well, that's just it. It's how do either teams respond given the nature of their schedule, right? I feel like that's a make or break game for both sides. I'm really intrigued to see how close is Indiana to the upper echelon. Now, it's granted it's a road game. It's at Autzen Stadium. Both teams have 2 weeks to prepare, but that's gonna be a really good coaching battle. I think at the end of the day, Oregon's talent's probably going to be better than Indiana's talent. That's kind of what. But the X's and O's battle will be so close. Can Kurt Cignetti and his staff scheme 1 or 2 plays that get you within striking distance to potentially upset an Oregon team, which I think is very well possible. But if it comes down to who just has the best players, then Oregon wins that game.
Yeah, and that's what you would say on paper for sure. But I think for Curt Cignetti, who I know you talked about this and I do all the time, he's one of the best game coaches in the country.
Absolutely.
But Dan Lanning's just one of the best coaches in the country. You guys saw it. I see it all the time. Dan Lanning is awesome. He's a really, really fun coach. You can tell the players rally around him and want to play for him, and he gets the most out of his guys. And they're going to be ready to go. A top 10 matchup in Autzen Stadium, they're going to be ready. They don't care if it's Penn State, Ohio State, or Indiana. They will be ready to go. And the Hoosiers just need to compete here. Go out, give yourself a chance, and if you win, then you're well on your way to making the college football playoff. But Zach, you know this. Nobody's picking Indiana in this game. Everybody's going to jump on Oregon. Everybody.
I think for the most part, I think you'll see that collectively again is that, well, Oregon hasn't really disappointed us for the most part. Sure. I think that people will look back at the Indiana-Notre Dame game from the playoff and say that, oh, well, Curt Cignetti in big games is not too much different than James Franklin. At least that's the perception. I'm not trying to say, but if we're speaking from the public point of view, the general, hey, who are the other 70-80% of people that casually watch college football? It's that, well, Dan Lanning, aside from the Rose Bowl, knows how to win these games. It's at Autzen. Indiana, you see when it's a high-stakes game, they crumble too, and they're just a different version of Penn State, which is a pretty normal conclusion, honestly.
Yeah. Well, thankfully, Indiana-Oregon is not until next week. There are some good games in the Big Ten this week, though. Some say it's a down week. I'm not buying it. We make our predictions for the Big Ten slate coming up this weekend right after this.
And this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. It's their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors. This is training reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools that will help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. You'll love Peloton IQ's system and how it offers real-time strength coaching. It actually tracks your reps, suggests the right weights, and corrects your form, making every single rep safer and smarter. The swivel screen is a game changer. You can go from running on the Tread Plus to strength training without missing a beat. And the personalized class recommendations keep you engaged. You get workouts tailored to your vibe and energy level each week. So let yourself run, let yourself lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com. Week 6 gives us a condensed Big Ten slate, as some teams, as we have pointed out, are on a bye. But let's jump into the games by the closest margin, the spread, Washington and Maryland, and we'll finish with Ohio State and Penn State. So beginning with the Huskies and the Terps, this one is in Maryland. Washington, after getting that reality check against Ohio State, has to fly across the country here to a Maryland team that's just looking to mess stuff up. That's honestly how I look at this team as they care, but it's a bull in the China shop mentality. Hey, people thought our coach was going to be fired. We're a bunch of first and second year players that nobody really knows about. And honestly, Maryland is proving a lot of people wrong. And they're a team that only gets better as the season goes along. I would not be shocked here if Maryland pulls off the upset per se. I thought the spread would be a little bit closer, maybe within a field goal margin. I think Washington has enough because I think Jed Fish and his coaching staff are still better than Mike Locksley and that coaching staff. So give me Washington, but really watch for that travel and maybe some of the lingering effects of being humbled by Ohio State.
Look, I understand Maryland's undefeated. I get it. They're 4-0, and they're 1-0 in the Big Ten, but they beat a Wisconsin team that might be the worst in the Big Ten. Like, that's the level we're talking about here with a coach that is probably going to get fired, even if our buddy Ryan doesn't think so. Malik Washington's playing well. He's a fun quarterback. The quarterback battle in this game will be a lot of fun, but Washington has something to prove after last week's game against Ohio State. I think they figured out offensively. I think Washington wins, and they win big. Give me 35-21 Washington to win and to cover.
All right. Illinois-Purdue. This one's surprisingly under around 10 points, depending on where you look, 9.5, 10 points. This opened up as a touchdown favorite. I thought Illinois would be a larger favorite, but I'm not too concerned. Hey, Purdue's well coached. Purdue's disciplined, right? That's what happens when you change culture, when you change coaching. But I'm not concerned about the Boilermakers here. You might catch Illinois in a spot where they're coming off the high of a USC win, then they got to go on the road. They're still banged up, right? I think Indiana, made a statement, but they did catch them in an ideal spot too. That's not the best version of Illinois as it is. So I don't know Illinois' injury chart, injury depth to begin with, really. So if they're still missing some key players, I guess Purdue could make this a closer game. But I'm still going to take Illinois just from the sake of they have more talent at the end of the day than Purdue. So I will take them to cover by at least 10 points.
To avoid the letdown situation, if there's a road trip in the Big Ten you want to make the week after a big win, it's either Northwestern, which can be an awkward place to play with the 30,000 fans, or it's Purdue in West Lafayette. And yes, I'm saying that as the Indiana guy, but it's also true because Purdue is just not that tough place to play like it has been in the past. 11 a.m. kick, Central Time, noon Eastern Time. I always say the early kickoff benefits the road team. I think Illinois is a much more talented team. I think Brett Bielema's got his boys playing good after the USC win. Give me Illinois big.
For the sake of public relations for the Big Ten Conference, Northwestern, please do not lose to the please do not lose to UL Monroe, the Warhawks here. But I will here. I just can't help but want chaos. I will be rooting for the Warhawks for the sake of just I like rooting for the trendy underdog there. And I think it can happen, but David Braun's still a good coach, okay, at the end of the day. And good coaches do not let these types of games happen. So I think Northwestern wins, but UL Monroe keeps it actually pretty close. I could see the Warhawks covering.
Okay, look, I think Northwestern has a really good defense. I think their run game is pretty solid. That's about all they got going for them. UL Monroe is on a 2-game win streak, so watch out now after giving up 70 to the Crimson Tide. But no, I'll stick with the Big Ten. I'll give Northwestern some credit at home. I'll say they get it done, but I'm not touching an 11.5-point spread. Nope, I am good on that.
Nebraska, Michigan State. Sneaky kind of game that, could be back and forth. They trade punches. I'm expecting this one to turn into a shootout kind of game. I think Nebraska's offense is really good. I think Michigan State's is only scratching the surface of how good it can be. So I like a lot of points in this one. Does that mean that Nebraska wins by, 2 touchdowns? It's 11.5-point spread. I will tell you this, though. I think this game gets potentially into the 30s for both teams. The quarterbacks are both very good. These are offensive systems that are tailored to benefit both teams. So give me points, but I could see Michigan State having another backdoor cover situation like they did against USC.
I think this is a really fun game. Both teams looking for their first win in Big Ten play. It's in Lincoln. It's that mid-afternoon kick, right? 4 Eastern, 3 Central on FS1.
Perfect.
Michigan State has every chance to go in and win this game. Nebraska cannot overlook the Spartans because I'm with you. I think Michigan State's offense is just getting rolling. They got some confidence last week against USC. I hate the 11.5-point spread for Nebraska. Give me Michigan State to cover, but Nebraska's going to have to hold them off 34-28.
If I had to pick one, it's kind of right in the sweet spot. I think that line's fairly tight because I can see this being a 10-point game. I can also see it being 2 touchdowns if Michigan State doesn't close late. I think Nebraska wins, but that, like I said, points. Like 35-28 is certainly in the realm of possibility.
Yep.
Michigan, Wisconsin, this one, I think it only gets worse for Wisconsin from here. I don't know how they go on the road to Ann Arbor like that. Michigan by a lot. Michigan by a ton.
Yeah, Michigan may run for 300-plus yards in this game. And you look at Bryce Underwood's stats on the year, and it's like, really? That's all he's done? But you look at what they've done outside of him, and they just run the ball. They play great defense, and they run the ball. Shocker, that's what they're doing at Michigan, and they're going to do it again on Saturday. Yeah, Michigan by a lot.
Michigan by a lot. Okay, Penn State by a lot. They fly across the country to
better hope so.
Good old Southern California. They're give or take 25.5-point favorites. I've gone on the record to say that my score prediction's 35-10, so that's right on the line, which would stay under the total too. But I don't expect Penn State to make these wholesale improvements that kind of correct their offensive struggles. It's that cross-country trip. You're not going to have the same juice and energy that you did against Oregon. So if UCLA wasn't in such a terrible spot, this is characterized as a trap game, but UCLA's down awful, not just down bad. They're down awful. I will take Penn State to you don't have to worry about the Bruins, but it won't be the prettiest of games, 35-10.
I think Penn State's offense will figure it out just by default. I mean, you're talking about a UCLA team that gave up 40 plus to Utah. They let UNLV and Dan Mullen score 30 points on them. Like, Penn State's got to have offensive success in this game. I think they will. It'll be ugly. I like, what'd you say, 35-10? I like 42-7. I like even worse than that. UCLA is bad. They've cleaned house. They fired everybody. It's going to be ugly in this game. I like 42-7 Penn State.
Final game on the Big Ten slate, 7:30 kickoff, Ohio State, Minnesota visiting Columbus. Do the Buckeyes shut out Minnesota? I think it's definitely in the realm of possibility. That Ohio State defense is superb. Matt Patricia, this is easy for him. I will take it and say that Ohio State wins. I still want to see more from their offense, though. That's where the question marks lie, but the defense will set them up. Give me 35-0, Ohio State.
35-0. See, I want to say that Minnesota is improving because they beat Rutgers last week, but I stayed up late and watched them play California a couple of weeks ago, and I can't get that image out of my head. 27-14 against Cal. That's just gross stuff, man. I mean, I can't get that performance out of my head. They may not get past midfield in this game, and I think Ohio State just lets it rip with some of the best offensive players in the country. I like Ohio State by a ton in this game. I'll take 45-3 Ohio State because they call off the dogs in the fourth quarter.
And that's where we're going to wrap up this crossover episode, talking Big Ten, focusing on Penn State and Indiana as always, since that is our job. I'm Zach Seyko, host of Locked On Nittany Lions. He is Jacob Goins of Locked On Hoosiers. Subscribe to both of our respective shows for daily Penn State and Indiana content. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments section. We do this daily here, so thank you so much for joining us once again to talk some Big Ten football.